Greetings again with the Oral History microphone. This is Ray Mofield, and we're visiting today in the home of Mrs. Hal Perry out near Brewers. Really, I guess it's on the Highway 80 between Hardin and Brewers, but I always called it the Brewers community. Miss Perry, it's very nice for you to let us come in, and would you tell us if you're at least 65?
Yes, I'm 65 and over.
Yeah, okay.
I'm 85.
Well, what a marvelous age. People are living longer, it seems, all the time. And would you tell us your mother and father's name?
My father's name was James Chesterfield York, and my mother's name was Bertie Hunt. Bertie Hunt York.
Mm-hmm. And were you born in this county?
Yes, I was. About a half a mile from here.
Well, you've spent a lifetime in this neighborhood. Have you liked it?
Oh, yes, I love it.
Would you wish it had happened somewhere else?
No.
You're satisfied?
I'm satisfied. I think it's one of the most wonderful places there is to be.
Oh, that's great. Do you remember your grandparents on either side?
Yes, I do. My grandfather York lived with us for a while and died there. And then, of course, I remember Grandpa Hunt and Grandma.
Can you go back any farther than that?
No, that's as far back as I can go.
Okay.
Well, yes, there is my great-grandfather, Jake Kinnup, and Sarah Kinnup. They were my great-grandparents.
Well, the more names we get on here, the better the genealogists like it.
They just had two children. It was Grandma Hunt and Uncle Henry Kinnup. Was their two children.
All right, if you grew up around here, was there a one-room school nearby that you went to?
Sure was. Jackson School, right up here. I didn't have to go far to school either.
Uh-huh. Jackson School. Well, I've heard of that a lot. Of course, there's a Jackson School Road that seems to run all over the county.
Yes, well, it passes by there.
And could you recall any of your teachers, maybe?
Yes, I can. I think my first teacher was Robert Blagg, and he married Miss Effie while he was teaching there. Then Walter Seaford was a teacher of mine. Orlando Magnus taught 3 or 4 years up there, I think. And Vera taught a year or two, Vera Magnus. And Jack Gatlin was our teacher, too, for a few years, and he married Faye Swift. You know, her father.
I've heard those names before. Now, let's see, one of those girls marry Robert Leneve, I believe, and
June married Robert.
One of the girls married Neil Talbert, I think.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I'd heard that name. Now the others were mostly new to me. So. Well, what did you like most about school when you were going?
I liked it all. I just loved school.
Uh-huh.
I liked to go to school. And I never missed unless I was sick or something kept me from it.
The ideal pupil. That's great. Teachers like that kind.
Well,
but you don't always have them.
No, that's right. I went to school at Benton for 2 or 3 years, I believe, and Miss Regina Pace was my teacher in the 3rd and 4th grade.
Oh, I recall her as a clerk at the Bank of Hardin. She worked there with Mr. Dave Booker for a long time.
And then Herman Holland was my teacher there at Benton for 1 year when I was in the 5th grade, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Well, what did you like to play, or what did you play around school?
Everything that anybody else played, I liked it.
Hopscotch?
Hopscotch and...
Skip the rope?
Yes. Hide and seek. Mm-hmm. Orlando Magnus brought a croquet set to school, and we really enjoyed that. And that was way back, you know, we didn't have anything like that much then to play.
Well, I never saw one until I was grown.
Well, he brought that, and I was a child going to school.
Yeah. All those things are a lot of fun. I guess you had to take your lunch.
Oh, yes, we did. We took what we had. It wasn't much sometimes. We'd take boiled corn on the cob, and when it was in season, fried potatoes.
And school back then, I guess, it did when I was going, we started somewhere around the 1st of July and went till, maybe a little after Christmas.
Yes.
Seems to me we had 7-month terms now.
We went to school till, well, I think after we had our exercise for Christmas, school was out. I don't believe we had any in January.
Did you ever star in any of those little plays and so on that they put on at Christmas time for the parents?
Not much. I wasn't very good at that.
Well,
I couldn't sing, and mostly, I never could sing. Mostly there was little songs. But I have in some where we would have the candles and march. And I could do things like that.
you could put on angel wings and
Yes.
be in some of the
Be in some of the plays.
little plays and so forth. Oh, that was a lot of fun.
It was. It really was a lot of fun. I had some real good friends in school that I'll never forget. We played together and visited each other.
And you've lived long enough, I guess, that the majority of those are already gone.
Yes,
That
most
brings
of them
in
are
a little
gone.
bit of a sad note. But you were, did you have any sweethearts, little school sweethearts back then?
Not much. I didn't have very many. The ones that went to school, they teased me about some of them, and I didn't care about it, so I wasn't much interested in
Probably
boys.
teased you about the ones they knew you didn't like.
That's right. That's what they did. I made one of the girls mad at me. She got mad at me and blessed me out because I didn't like one of her brothers.
Now, you married Hal Perry.
Yes, I did.
Where did you meet him?
Oh, I met him up here at Charlie Rudd's. They had a little party there. And, well, I had seen him at wheat thrashings and around workings like that.
Mhm.
But I met him at this little party, and we played games up there, and the boys was on one side and girls on the other. And it was cross questions and crooked answers was the
Mhm.
name of the game. And he asked me if I'd marry him. I told him I was afraid he was no account. And that was the first time we ever talked to each other.
That at that point was a game.
It
But
was a game. It was
Later
a
on,
game.
it became serious. wasn't
Yes, but I never thought of such thing then.
it? Was he from Marshall County also?
Yes, he lived right up here, you know.
So he wasn't
Hamilton Perry was his father, you know.
wasn't
They
too
lived there.
far away. All
No,
right.
not where she lived, where Ruth and Paul Creason lived. They had the home there.
And then when you was your father a farmer?
Yes, he was. He was a farmer and sort of a trader.
Mhm.
He had a little grocery store at one time, and then he drove a huckster's wagon, I believe they called it then, too, while he had the store.
Would you tell us a little bit about what went on at a wheat thrashing? What did everybody work, the women and the men both?
Yes, the women worked because they cooked. We did a lot of cooking. We'd start real early, boil hams, and we had to prepare a lot of food. There was a lot of people who went with the wheat thrashing.
I've heard an expression, say, when you'd go to a giant meal, that people would say, well, that looks like a wheat thrashing dinner.
It was a giant meal. Lots of times we had it out in the yard, and we'd break limbs off the peach tree, to keep the flies off.
Mhm.
Everybody would fan the flies with a peach tree limb, or several of them would. And we had a lot of fun, though. It was fun. We could hardly wait till wheat thrashing time came about.
I had a great-grandfather named Howell Edwards, and he ran a wheat thrasher. And I can just barely remember the last year that he operated the wheat thrasher was 1930, or maybe it's 31. And it had a JIK steam engine. And they had wheat thrashing in that neighborhood. They'd move, 3 or 4 houses down the road each day and thrash everybody's wheat within reach. And I can just see my great-grandmother with a peach tree limb standing there waving the flies away. And that was hard work in itself.
Yes, it was.
After you'd worked all morning. And you cooked on a wood stove.
Yes, cooked on a wood stove, and lots of things we could cook in a black wash kettle in the yard, you know, where we had to cook hams and things like that.
But in that kitchen, it was blazing hot weather anyway.
Oh, it was. It really was. And it was out where we were eating, too. Just so hot.
I remember my mother, we didn't get electricity where we lived until 1947. And so she said, well, Ray, I don't want anything but lights and a refrigerator and an iron. Well, we bought that. And then the next year, I surprised her and bought a washer and a stove. I remember it was a GE range. And she was pretty mad about that. She said she just knew it wouldn't cook like a wood range.
Well, it doesn't. It didn't to me. I think
you felt the same way?
I felt the same way. I really did.
Well, that's quite interesting. And of course, the men were working hard. They, I can remember, of course, I was really too small to work, and they let me ride on the water wagon. A fellow named Van Ratliff, we'd go to Wade's Creek and fill that tank up. I think it held about 300 gallons, and I'd get to ride with Van.
I remember the water wagons, too. I didn't get to ride one, but I remember them.
And then, after they really got rolling big, the kids would play on the straw pile. Did you ever do that?
Yes, we did. Our straw pile was under an oak tree. My sister and I would go up the top and get a limb, swing down off to the ground off the straw pile, and she fell and broke her wrist doing that.
Oh. Well, that's one of the sad parts.
Yes,
Went along with
but we
it.
had a lot of fun before she did fall.
Did you ever take fresh straw then and put in your beds?
Oh, yes. That's when we emptied the old straw out of the ticks, we called it, straw ticks, and put new straw in, and they smelled so good and fresh, you know, and it was hard to keep them smoothed out. They get lumpy.
I could remember going to bed that night, and it just felt like you were in heaven.
Yes, it did.
And you're right, that straw had kind of a fresh smell about it, like a new mown meadow or something.
Yes, it did. We just loved it.
And did you ever have a feather bed?
Oh, yes. We had feather beds. We had feather beds since Hal and I lived here. It hadn't been too many years.
Where did you get all those feathers?
Well, my mother had geese, and Hal's mother had geese, and they plucked the feathers from the geese and made them.
So you made your pillows and the feather bed.
Yes, we did.
Now, even on a terribly cold night, you'd sink down in those feathers and put 4 or 5 quilts on top of that.
You could sleep. Hal and I slept upstairs at Mr. Terry's when we first married, and it wasn't sealed overhead, you know, just the roof there, and the snow would sift through, and we had so much covered we couldn't hardly move in the bed. Sink down in the feathers, as you said, and then cover with heavy quilts to keep warm. But we kept warm.
Yes. Well, I told some of the students at Murray once that snow would sort of sift through the houses in which we lived in, and they couldn't believe it. But
it did.
And I can remember of course, Dad was a sharecropper, and we rented various places. I think I counted up once that we lived at 12 different places before I finished high school. And I can remember the wind blowing, and Mother's curtains would wave back and forth.
Yes. No bears come in for that.
What did you do with a water bucket on an icy night?
Oh, we brought it in as close to the fireplace as we could get it. That's the only whipping I ever got from my father. I kept playing with the water in the water bucket. He told me to stop, but I didn't stop. So he didn't hurt me, but I didn't ever play in the water anymore like that.
He taught a lesson.
He taught a lesson.
Of course, he loved you.
Yes, he did. It didn't hurt. I I just couldn't feel it hardly, but
Well, what did you do for amusement when you were you'd married and you were young? Did you ever go to somebody's house and sit a while, sit till bedtime?
well, not too much. We stayed at home in the winter time. In summer we would, and we just didn't have much for amusement.
I can recall we'd go over to Van Ratliff I've mentioned before, and Van would always grow a little popcorn and some peanuts. And his wife was a good cook, and she'd make popcorn balls, and she made some kind of candy that had peanuts in it. And oh, she could make a cake out of it.
Peanut brittle, I guess.
Yeah, peanut brittle.
Peanut brittle.
And then she would make some kind of candy that you pulled on a long time. Taffy candy.
Taffy candy. We made that a lot too. We made candy a lot. Hal loved candy, and we made candy. And we popped corn and made popcorn balls. Made molasses candy,
Mm-hmm.
Pull it and make it bright and pretty, and it was good.
Where did you get the molasses?
Oh, we made the molasses. We cut the sorghum. We grew the sorghum and cut it, and then there was a sawmill right across the road from us up here. One year or two, we carried to the sawmill, molasses mills, and have it made.
There's always somebody that was an expert in the neighborhood of cooking that out. It took a little bit of skill to do it right.
Yes, it did. Jess Long was one of the best around here for a long time. He used to cook the molasses all for us.
Now, people, just like wheat thrashing, they traded work.
Yes, we did.
So in a way, you were more neighborly then than you are now. I guess circumstances dictated it.
Yes, that and hog killings, that was another thing where we would all get together and work. All the neighbors, or several of them would, because most people killed 5 or 6 hogs, butchered them in the fall, in November.
You'd stagger that out a little bit, and then as each one killed, every family would have fresh meat.
Yes, they would, and we'd help out, and then, yes, they'd divide with each family. They would divide with the others, the ones that was helping.
Mostly my memory there goes to turning the sausage grinder, and I wasn't skilled enough to use a knife like my dad, I guess, and work on cleaning the hogs and so forth. So I got also another job was to stir the cracklings.
Yes.
They boiled those out, made lard.
Used to, Ms. Perry would take a fresh rib, and put it in the cracklings while it was cooking, and we'd have the best rib you ever tasted. Cooked in those cracklings. It browned just a golden brown, and it was so good.
I'm getting a little hungry right now myself. All right, you were married, and did you have any children?
Yes, had 3 children. Ruth was our oldest. Then William, Bill.
I know Bill, yes.
And then we had a daughter, Linda. When she was 35 years old, she drowned over here at the lake. One year.
What a tragedy there.
In 1960.
Every home, I guess, has had some enjoyable times and some tragic times.
Yes, and back to my father, when he died, he had TB, and we all had the measles. We didn't have measles much. People didn't have measles very much then, but one of Mother's brothers came to help us strip tobacco, and while he was there, he took the measles. And there was 5 of us children, and my dad was in bed with TB. And he died while we had the measles. And 2 of my little sisters died, and they all 3 died within a week.
So you've stripped tobacco?
Oh, yes. I've stripped tobacco. Sucker tobacco and whole tobacco.
Did you ever worm any?
Oh, yes, but I didn't like that.
Oh, my wife, Janie, was a noted coward, I think. All the family tells stories about she would, when ran into one of those real big ones about the size of your finger, that she'd take a stick and knock it off, and then kill it with a stick. She
Yes.
didn't want to tear it apart with her fingers.
Well, I'd get it by the head because sometimes they pinch you, those big ones would, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I always get them by the head and throw them down and mash them.
All right, did you continue to live in Marshall? I know a lot of families during the Depression, they'd go to Detroit or somewhere.
We went to Detroit, but we didn't stay very long there. And then we've lived around several places because Hal did construction work, you know. We lived in Bremen, Kentucky, and Greenville, Kentucky. And in Chicago, he worked there some. And we've lived different places. But I was always glad to get back to Marshall County.
Now, in later years, when I knew him, when I was working at Dr. Woods' office at Murray State, it seemed to me that he built more of the buildings at Murray than almost anyone. He had a very large construction company.
Yes, he did. He built a lot of the new housing projects up there, you know, when they first began to build them.
Mm-hmm.
And he's built churches and schools, Sedalia, and, I don't know, at the different places. He did a lot of
You
work.
remember how he came to get into that? What?
Well, it was during he had started building. He hated farming. We didn't get anything out of the tobacco. It was never any count. He didn't like to farm, and you know, if you don't like to do something, you don't do a very good job at it. And he built a little house or two around here. And then
Started small.
yeah, started small, and then when the WPA days came, he got a good job with that. Worked there for a long, long time.
And he kept learning more
Kept
about.
learning about building, and he just learned himself. He didn't have very much education. He quit school, I think, in the 8th grade maybe. But he just,
Well, he was an astute businessman. He was a natural, apparently, because didn't he become president of the Bank of Benton?
yes, he did. He became president there until he was too old and had to retire.
Back in those days, the way they organized the banks, generally, what was known as the president was really the chairman of the board. He
Yes.
wasn't the professional banker that
No,
worked there every day.
that's right.
But he
That's right.
hired the president. Well, at one time they called them cashiers, didn't they?
I believe so.
And then later executive vice president or some such thing. And I'm sure he was president there when Mr. Paul Darnell was operating the bank.
No, Paul Darnell, that was just the last few years that Hal was president.
Mm-hmm.
The last few years he was.
Now, we mentioned that you had 3 children,
Yes.
and one of them was Bill. Do you have any grandchildren?
Oh yes, I have grandchildren. I have 7 grandchildren and 11 great grandchildren,
Oh,
and all the great grandchildren are boys, but 2.
well,
Not many girls.
tilted in favor of the males here. Well, we need some girls, don't we?
Yeah. Well, Ruth and Paul, she married Paul Creason, and they have 4 girls. They're all still living.
Uh-huh.
Bill and Margaret lost their youngest girl. She had cystic fibrosis, you know, a disease, incurable disease.
Good.
Died when she was 10 years old.
Now, I know Roger. He was a county officer. Was he not county attorney?
Yes, he was.
And he and George Long, I guess, are partners now. And are they still together?
Yes, they're still together and working together and seem to be doing well.
Mm-hmm. Now, Bill, does he run the construction company still?
Yes, he does. They haven't had any business lately, you know. There's not been much construction going on. They have a job at Mayfield now that they just was low bidders, and I reckon that they have given them the job.
Well, I read in the paper where that new gymnasium, a multi-million-dollar project, was given to Bill.
Yeah, well, yes, that's what I'm talking about.
From my point of view, I was glad it happened.
Well, I was too.
You know, it always amazed me how many different construction firms there were in Marshall. There must have been more in Marshall County than all the other 7 purchase counties put together.
They must have been. They wasn't some, Hal and Bob McWaters.
Uh-huh.
When we came from Chicago, Hal and Bob McWaters went in together and worked. And there wasn't very many then, very few construction people in the county. But they just kept, I reckon they really made good, Hal and Bob did, and Hal did for a long time. But they just got to where there's so many, it was hard to get a job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where someone does well in a gas station, they'll say somebody will build one right beside you.
I know. It's like fishing. When you went fishing to catch a fish, somebody comes right by the side of you and wants to fish with you.
All right. How long has Mr. Perry been dead?
He died in 1977. Dead 6 years.
Could you tell us anything about Brewers when you were a little child? Was it any bigger? Was there more business around then?
Oh, yes. We had a post office down there, and there was a Woodman Hall there, and there was 2 stores down there. Uncle Jimmy Chester had a store there, for a long, long time. And then Mr. Tobe Baker had a store there across the road from Uncle Jimmy's.
And
John Adlish did too. You remember John Adlish, I'm sure.
Yes.
He had a store. He were on that store there for quite a while.
And of course, somewhere in the 20s, they built a high school at Brewers.
Yes, they did. And the first one burned, I believe, didn't it? And then they built another one. And we had school in the church basement for a little while they were getting to finish that.
Brewers became one of the most famous of all high schools for its basketball.
Yes.
McCoy Terry. And
That's right, McCoy Terry. And the
I know
boys.
you were proud of them, and they were in the state tournament at least 3 years that I can remember, 46, 47, 48, I believe. Or maybe they went in 42, 3 or 4, somewhere along. Anyway, they went several times. And I do recall I broadcast the games when they were runners-up in 47, and then the winners in 48.
Yes. There was something for them to win the state tournament then.
Well, not only was it great for Brewers, but I think I'm right that was the only team that was ever unbeaten. At least there hasn't been one since, I don't think. That went all the way through and never lost a single game.
I don't believe there has been one since.
So that kind of put Brewers on the map.
Yes, it sure did. You talk about Brewers away from home, and a lot of people remember them winning the game there. The tournament
Did you ever use any particular home remedies that kept your children healthy? Did you give them castor oil or catnip tea? Or
Yes, tried to give them castor oil. It was a job to get them to take it. And used to, a long time ago, we would give them a drop of turpentine on sugar for bad coughs,
Mm-hmm.
And when they get sick with a real bad cold, we'd make onion poultices to put on their chest.
Well,
So I've got way back, that was way back, when Ruth was little. I know she almost had pneumonia. Jess Long was there, and he told me, he said, I'll tell you what to do. Get you some onions and roast them here in the ashes in the fire and make a poultice and put on her chest.
I heard someone say one time that when children would have the thrush, some kind of an inflammation in the mouth, that they'd take them to somebody and they'd blow in that and it just disappeared.
I've heard that too. Then we wore asafoetida, around our neck. You remember? You didn't have to wear that, did you?
No, but I've heard of it. And in fact, I've seen some, and I've smelled it.
Yes, it was awful, but they thought it kept the colds away.
I believe it did. I don't think anybody with a cold would have got close to you with that on you.
I don't believe so either. Oh.
Well, you know, Miss Perry, I've had a lot of fun. I hope you have, and we're just about a minute away from the end of the tape. So do you have any particular story you'd like to put on that you haven't told yet? Maybe something amusing?
Well, not very many. I remember when Bill and Linda were little, we lived down here, and they were always knocking at the door. And so one day somebody knocked at the door, and I thought it was them, and I said, well, crawl under if your nose is clean. And when I went to it, they didn't come in, and I went to the door, and it wasn't them. So I tell you, I felt terrible. I can't remember who was there now.
Well,
Oh, there's been a lot of scrapes if I could just remember them.
the funny things of life.
Yes, that's right.
Well, it's been a pleasure to me, and thank you for letting me come. It's good to meet you again and know that you're doing well in your 85th year.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
This is Ray Mofield. We return you now to our studios in Benton.